Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now here's your host, Jack Moore.
That was November 22nd, 1963. That was Edward Newman of NBC News. He was making the announcement that it was official that Malcolm Kilduff, who was the assistant press secretary, came out to announce officially at just beyond 1 p.m. that President Kennedy was in fact dead. America had heard quite a few releases on the radio and TV, which was still 15 years into its prominence that it became. People started getting the TVs in the 50s and the 60s, so it was a lot of TV, but a lot of people were hearing it on radio. And their reactions were varied, and now it's 60 plus years ago, and it's back in the news. And it's back in the news, and to give my background, I am a licensed attorney. So I went through law school, went through legal training. I got a master's degree in history, and when I did, I wrote on the Kennedy assassination. I actually wrote on this subject. So I am going to go into some things now with President Trump's announcement of a potential release of all the documentation that the government is in possession of related to not only John F. Kennedy, but his brother Bobby Kennedy, who was a senator from New York at the time, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. All this release documents, what does it mean? Why does it matter? It appears from a lot of the reports, people seem to care to some degree still. I'm of an age where I was a year and a half when it happened. I have a great American on here with me right now that I want to get opinions about. She's not Joe Q. Citizen. I guess it would be Josephine Q. Citizen. But what do people think? Like, I'm into it. I've studied all my life, so I'm one of the nerdy people that really care a lot about these kind of reports. But I wonder what most people think. So my guest here, Laura, what do you think? Do you care?
I think it's of huge importance, yes. Yeah, because we think that are secrets. We want to know what the secret is.
So that's an interesting point because some historians have said, and I think that a lot of what we think of history comes from the media available.
Right.
So if you're 1791 in it, you're pretty much into the newspapers. You get the printing press, you get, fast forward, and it's the newspaper. So in 1920, you start to hear radio, and radio is very, and I've always asked people this. Do you ever notice it on your newspaper? And I remember this growing up. There would be the call signal or the numbers and letters from the radio station, and then they eventually became the TV stations. And people are like, oh yeah, that's right. People that were first on TV were radio people because the radio people were pretty much owned by the newspaper people. So newspapers own radio stations and eventually own TV. So they often had the same slant on stories, but people went from reading about it to hearing about it to seeing it. And this was huge with the Kennedy assassination because having also lived through the Reagan shooting, they were much better in 1963 handling the news of Kennedy's assassination than they were in 81 with Reagan. They're all over the place. They're scrambled around. They're making false reports. They got Reagan dead. He's not. Everybody's dead. Everybody's dying. They don't really know what's happening. So given the time, 1963, when you go back from that standpoint and look at how the news media handled that event, it was pretty good. But it was also where a lot of things changed. And this is that thing many historians say, it's where innocence died in the United States. Once Kennedy's killed, there's just so many things that follow behind it. Now, you're a very young lady, so you don't have any memories of these type of things. But when you say, and I'm interested in this, what do you think changes? And I don't particularly think this is going to be the case, but what if it comes out and they're like, hey, you know what? Son of a gun, here it is. This is what the president's never released. The CIA said Kennedy had to die, and they took him out.
I think that's what it says.
You
And
think that's what it's going to say?
I think that's what it says. And I think that is going to create so much disillusionment because we're taught to trust the authorities and put our faith in the authorities. And I don't think that they're trustworthy.
All right. Well, that being said, I mean, to me, there's already way enough out there. But again, I'm nerdy in the field. I'm in that space where I'm looking at things. I spoke at a Chamber of Commerce event in a small town 10, 15 years ago. I had a friend like, hey, come talk to everybody. And I said, well, there was an Operation Northwoods thing that was really kind of bad. And that was apparently in the 60s with Kennedy as president. There were members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I think this mostly gets thrown at Curtis LeMay, who was a hero. I mean, he was a war hero of the First Order, and he was a pilot during World War II, and he goes on to be four-star. I don't think he got it. Yeah, he was four-star general. But anyway, he's in that space between the Army Air Corps going to the Air Force. And the story that eventually came, I think it was in the 90s, is Operation Northwoods was an actual sit down and let's strategically plan out how to do a false flag of Cuba just shot down an American airline with American passengers. We got to invade. Now, the story was it got to Kennedy's desk and he was like, whoa. What is this? And they're like, yeah. We need to get Cuba first. We need to get into Cuba. We need to attack them. We need a reason why, a false flag, as they say it. So I said that. It's like, look it up on Wikipedia. I don't know how accurate that would be, but you can look it up. Operation Northwoods. And this guy gets incensed. Are you trying to tell me that our government would be? I was like, whoa, dude, like, yeah, I am saying that. Like, and he's really mad. I can't believe you question our government. Like, and I'm like, that's not really in dispute. And then, of course, there's the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which escalates the war in Vietnam and is supposed to be based, totally fabricated. Johnson needed an end. He runs in 64. There was the famous, I shall not send American boys into Southeast Asia to do what Asian boys should do. And then he sends 500,000 troops into Vietnam after he's reelected. So he runs at Goldwater, is the warmonger, going to drop nukes in Vietnam. And then the first thing he does. Now, it's in large part based upon the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which some have said was written before the incident. That it's supposed to be a firing on the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin, and all hell breaks loose. But my point is, the government has clearly lied a lot. So, we can't say things probably about any of our contemporary history, but do you think maybe in the last 5 to 10 years anything's happened that made people maybe more question its government? Maybe?
Like COVID?
I didn't say that. I did not say that. And I'm not sure I heard you say that. But so Laura, you being again Josephine Q citizen, what if I'm asking you, like, what do you think happens in America if they come point blank and say, and let me just back up and say this real quick. I think there's much greater chance that there was nefarious government ties to King's assassination and maybe even Bobby Kennedy's than there was John's.
That could be.
Yeah, I do think that. But okay, let's say all three. All three of them. All three of them have some stains on it. But JFK is clearly 3 CIA types in a room, and they said he's got to go. What's that going to do?
I think it's going to do two things potentially. One, I think it's going to give people actually more trust in the government because now you have a government who's willing to expose these kinds of things. On the other hand, I think it's going to create less because we have this history of lies to the American people. So I think we're going to have a split.
All right, you make a great point there, as it strikes me, because there's no doubt, for whatever purposes, you already said the C word, and I can't believe you did that, but anyway. But Trump being polarizing figure as he is, the fact remains, if he's the guy that comes out and tells us the truth, I think you're right. I think there might be an uptick in belief in the government because it was allowed to happen. As long as, he's certainly run on the outsider label. There's no doubt about it. He's trying to say, I'm the renegade, I'm the outsider. I'm telling you, it's all fixed against you, whatever. However, wherever you are on the Trump thing, one way or the other. If you're going to be the government person that comes out and says, it's all rigged against you and I'm here to clean it up, that's a big part of the cleanup if you say,
Yeah.
and let me tell you what happened to your president 60 years ago. And yeah, I think you're right. I think the overall net effect could be positive because it would be the government finally coming clean. But now it's going to have to be a lot of things behind it that follow
Right.
that make people think, yep, and you're on that, and you're cleaning house to some degree. So once again, Joseph EQ citizen. I hope you don't mind Josephine, but growing up in America, the whole Oswald thing, did you find it hard to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald did it?
So, my exposure to JFK's assassination was really around the movie, the Oliver
Right,
Stone movie,
right.
which was so convoluted to me. There were so many characters, so many things, plots, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, other than just being really sensational. Um, no, it didn't. It didn't impact me the way that it impacted you.
Right, and I'm much older than you, so I was connected to people that had, probably a different view on it as well. So, like they were around to really have that impact. Now that I'm coaching baseball and some softball too, and I'm working gosh, I was talking to a kid yesterday, and we're trying to compare notes about the state of the NFL, which I think, of course, is horrible now, but it's like flag football now. But I was like, I think the greater players played 80s and 90s, whatever. And then I said, well, what year were you born? And he goes, 2004. And, it strikes me. I'm like, man, this kid literally was not alive for 9/11, but all these kids of that age. So I think that perspective, I remember, and you probably do as well. And this is what my parents told me about the Kennedy assassination. To some degree, my dad said about Pearl Harbor. Like my dad was a farmer out there in central Virginia, Lynchburg area. And he said most of the farmers around, where's Pearl Harbor? Where's that? They really didn't Pearl Harbor in Hawaii did not mean anything to them. But they all remember the Kennedy assassination to the moment exactly. And we had that same kind of history with 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you really do remember exactly where you were, standing. I remember what I was wearing. I mean, I remember everything about it. It was so burned in. So we have those kind of watershed moments, and we do have a tendency, I think, with time. Like, how long after 9/11 did you question that? Sure you did, right?
No, when it first happened, I believed everything that they were saying, 100%.
Did that change?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I won't make you have to go down that road either, but um, why do you why do you think that is with people? Do you think it's that it all fits too neatly?
What do I think?
Like
What
when
fits
the
too?
stories come out, like one of the major things about Oswald, really, one of the major things is his whole bio is in the newspapers in the 5 o'clock afternoon edition. And there were people, it was addressed in JFK. There were people like, wait. This guy was in the Soviet Union. You know too much about him.
Mm.
He just turned 24 years old. 15 minutes ago, he got arrested for the assassination. And they're running his complete bio in the papers that evening. You know,
That sounds a bit hard to believe in the era before the internet.
yeah, absolutely. So I could see where that would feed someone's, I'm not so sure I can trust the government with anything, seems too staged. All right, so take 9/11. Did you feel that same way? Maybe you
N-
didn't.
No, that was not on my radar at all.
I I remember I was prosecuting at the time where we, in Chesapeake, and I had a morning case, and one of the fellow prosecutors that was big into the internet before anybody else was like literally watching TV on the computer when no one else had figured that you could do that. So I have a 9 o'clock. I went to a prayer breakfast with Oral Hershiser, the pitcher. And I tell this buddy of mine, I was like, I got to go because I got to be in court. So I head to court. I go, and the victim doesn't show up. So I don't know, the judge accepted my motion to continue it or what. But I'm like, hey, I grab my stuff, started heading upstairs. So I walk in, and this fellow prosecutor goes, hey, they just flew a building into the World Trade Center. First thought, I'm like, was it like heavy fog? Because I remember the plane during the World War II era that flew into the side of, oh gosh, I guess that was the Empire State Building. Hit about the 69th floor, something like that. Yeah, it happened during the war. And it was a big, large plane. I remember it was a bomber type plane or some kind of carrier plane. But it got dense fog and flew into the Empire State Building in the 40s during the war. So my first thought, he goes, nah, it's crystal clear, beautiful, most beautiful day ever. Like, okay, that's not kind of weird. So then, there's another one. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, another one just hit. And he's watching it on the internet. So we all run to the TV room. So then when they say Pentagon, I'm like, that's it. I thought that's it. It's World War III. Something's happening. This is literally World War III. So that was all the thoughts that I had. Didn't know who the Who was yet. But by that afternoon, we're starting to hear who the Who is. And then we're finding out that some of the pilots lived in Virginia Beach. At the time I was living in Virginia Beach, so then it all started, Arizona, there are all these people here in the country. So as time went on, all the questions came up about the buildings, the different things. And then everybody has to be an expert on how things happen. Very much like the Kennedy assassination. I'm going to ask you this as my guinea pig great American here. Do you believe Oswald, knowing what you know, do you believe Oswald could have fired the shots?
Yeah, I believe he could have.
And you think that the results that came about from the shooting are consistent with a lone shooter?
It's funny because ever since we started talking about the Trump shooting,
yeah,
I've learned a whole lot more about shooting and what's possible. I've seen so many people talk about, well, this is how this shot can happen. This is how this shot can happen if you are a person who, like a sniper. So yeah, I think it could have been him. I think it could have been him as the only one.
Right. Well, and I'm putting on your spot. I'm putting you a little on the spot here, but yeah, when it comes to the lore of the single bullet theory, it's most often argued that the people in the Warren Commission got stuck with a timing problem from the Zapruder film. So all of you, everyone watching this has probably had some kind of John F. Kennedy assassination background. Again, the people that are old enough to remember certain things is dwindling, but you probably are all familiar with the Zapruder film. And as Laura mentioned, when you're talking about the movie JFK, it was prominently displayed in the movie.
Yeah.
And it was prominently displayed that Jim Garrison, played by Kevin Costner, this never happened. By the way, sidebar here, I don't know. Are you familiar with the fact that, was it Wayne Knight that was in Seinfeld was in JFK?
No.
Are you okay? And for all those, you're going to love this if you're a Seinfeld fan. They did a spoof on Seinfeld about hating Keith Hernandez, the first baseman for the New York Mets. So they come in one day. It comes in Kramer and Newman, played by Wayne Knight. I think it's Wayne Knight, the guy that played Newman. So Newman comes in. Of course, Jerry goes like, Newman, hello, Jerry. And he says something about, yeah, I'm going to run into Keith Hernandez because they had become friends, Seinfeld and Keith Hernandez. And then Newman goes, I hate Keith Hernandez. He goes, why? And he goes, you tell it. No, you tell it. So he and Kramer go back and forth about who's going to tell the story. And they tell the story that as they were walking across the parking lot, Hernandez spit on them. Right? So Seinfeld grabs a golf club and he goes, well, let me see if I can reconstruct this since I've heard this story so many times. And he goes, you're saying that you were spit on and it struck you between the third and fourth vertebrae, and then it came out and it splashed off Kramer, knocking his head back. And the moment they go into it, you're like, oh my God, this is hysterical, because they're doing the courtroom scene from JFK where Garrison goes through what the bullet had to do, and it ends up in the lap of the same actor. And I didn't know if anybody really caught that at the time. The same actor that played Newman is in JFK in the same position going through the same thing. All right. But in that, when the Warren Commission gets the Zapruder film, they have 486 frames running at roughly 18.3 frames a second. So it gives them a clock. Now they're making some guesses because it's without sound. What do they know for sure? Kennedy at frame 313, famously, most people know this, his head is struck and his head explodes at 313. Now he from Zapruder's view on the grassy knoll on that pedestal, he is looking up towards Houston Street, where he turns on to Elm, and then he's blocked for a certain amount of time by the Stemmons freeway sign. So Connolly and then Kennedy go behind the sign and then reappear. When they reappear, Kennedy appears to have been struck. And then everybody has a view on when Connolly was struck. But here's the deal. They found 3 empty cartridges on the 6th floor of the schoolbook depository. And the vast majority of witnesses said they heard 3 shots. So if we have 3 shots and they discover in June of 64, there's a guy named James Tagg who was struck in the face by raised fragments of pavement down on the street. They were kind of like headshot, errant shot, oh hell. If we're going to pin it all on Oswald, we have to have one shot do all the rest. That was the argument. Now, some have said the raised fragment that struck Tagg in the face down at the end of Elm Street, where it met Main Street and Commerce in the triple underpass, he was coming up Commerce into the city, got bogged in traffic and said, "What's going on?" Gets out of his car and is standing there like, "Oh, the president's going by." Bang. And then he feels something sting his face. And a cop comes up like, "Hey, man, your face is bleeding." And he goes, "Yeah, I kind of feel funny." So he was struck by something. He says he then went over and he looked at pavement near that section and you could see where it was a fresh bullet mark, he said. Now, some have said it was from the headshot, that the headshot, when it fragmented, some part of the fragmentation of the bullet came down and struck him. Who the hell knows? But if it is an errant shot that totally misses the car and then goes down and strikes pavement and injures Tagg, and the other's the headshot, there's only one other shot left. It's got to pass through Kennedy and Connolly, because Kennedy was clearly wounded before the headshot, clearly, and Connolly was wounded. So that leaves, and then of course, Arlen Specter goes on to be a U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania, comes up with the single bullet theory. And it just drives everybody crazy. That's everybody's famous can't happen. Now, I thought that for years because I was listening to the people that said it. So here again, as my citizen of I have great respect for, that is a great thinker and can hear all these things and form opinions based upon, whatever facts are presented. I've asked people this a lot. I saw 2 tests on this. They took and it's actually, I think the pronunciation is Carcano. People said Carcano forever, but it's a Mannlicher Carcano rifle. It's a 1940 bolt action World War II era Italian rifle. It's a 6.5 millimeter. And its ammunition is metal jacketed, which is a military round. So the 1922 Geneva Convention, I believe they come up with after World War II, soft lead bullets hit people and blow their arm off. It goes in small and blows out organs and everything else. So as kind of a way to fight cleaner, nicer wars, they come up with the idea that we're going to jacket the bullets. So not only does it have the lead core, it has a metal jacket. That doesn't come up on the street very often. So when they recovered fragments from the Kennedy bullets, they said the FBI was scrambling around like, we don't even know what this is. Like, your garden variety shooting on the street somewhere, we don't see these kind of bullets. And they really don't know a lot about what the bullets do. So I saw testing where they fired into pine board and then dug Mr. Bullet out. When they dug out the bullets, they fired the rifle directly into pine boards. How far do you think the bullet penetrated?
Through the whole thing.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's like they have a pine log. I'm sorry, I didn't set this up. It's like a pine log, and they went down on one end of the log and bam, fire.
Oh, shoot.
Then they went and x-rayed and said, where's the bullet? So, and the reason I'm saying that is, all right, let me set this up better. The single bullet theory says this: bullet strikes Kennedy high in the back, below, kind of, up in the upper shoulder region. It comes out of his throat and nicks his tie. There are those that defend the Warren Commission and say the nick in Kennedy's tie was clearly made from the inside of the tie, from the inside the knot. It didn't hit the front, it came out the back. So it means it exited his throat. Now, it's out in flight. It strikes Connolly right below the right armpit. It comes out 2 inches below, or I'm sorry, just below his right nipple, blowing out a 2-inch hole. It then strikes his right wrist, which he has kind of over his left thigh. It passes through and fractures his wrist and then lodges in his thigh. And they find a bullet on a stretcher that the stretcher guy, the orderly, says, I think it was, wait a minute, I don't know. He couldn't remember who was what, but he didn't think that the stretcher where the bullet was found was Connolly's. But a bullet, nearly whole, was found on a stretcher. So that became Commission Exhibit 399, which is supposed to be the single bullet. Now, they did some testing with modern testing here a few years ago. Fragments from Connolly's wrist were recovered, and they could go into the base of the bullet lead and recover particles of lead. And they found the composition to be identical, which means the bullet could have been from a batch of bullets that match Connolly's wrist fragments. Doesn't mean it's the bullet, but it means it could be the bullet. You follow?
Yep.
Yep. So they took fragments out of Connolly, they matched it to the tail end of the bullet, but people to this day say, no way, can't be, whatever. I thought that. So when I'm writing my thesis, the movie JFK actually had a screenplay come out that was annotated. It was amazing. So you could see in the script, the different actors saying this. And then at the bottom, they're like, this was based upon this. And some of it, they were like, yeah, we later found that to be bunk. What we put in the movie, absolutely BS, wasn't right. We turned out that we would be wrong. And in the screenplay, it gets into every supporting thing, etc. In the back of this screenplay, it is a lot of editorials from major newspapers throughout the country, on and on and on for years, as a result in response to the movie JFK. And one guy that wrote was a medical doctor, educated at UCLA, Los Angeles. And he said, hey, I'm a doctor. I was coming out of medical school. I was a hot shot, top of my class kind of guy. And I got a chance to be on the House Select Committee on Assassinations. I got a chance to be on that. And when I'm flying to Washington, I'm like, they're going to make a movie about me. I'm going to go in there and disprove all the BS. The Warren Commission was wrong. He goes, there was only one problem with it. Once I started seeing the evidence, I'm like, wait a minute, this is the only thing that makes any sense. And this is what he said. They saw all of the diagrams of Connolly's wound and his clothing. Connolly's wound under this armpit was exactly 1¼ inches long. You want to hazard a guess at what the length of the bullet was? Exactly 1¼ inches. So, and this is one of the things, a team of father-son team 10 years ago, or now more than 10 years ago, during the 50th anniversary, back to what I was saying, they fired into the pine board. They dug it out 40 inches in. I saw another, they dug one out of, they did blocks. So there were 1-inch blocks and they fired it and then they cut the tape between the blocks and they kept pulling. When they pulled the bullet out, it was perfectly pristine. It didn't have a mark on it. No, it didn't have a mark on it. So it went through 40 inches of pine board wood and was dug out without a mark. So the other one I saw, when they fired into the log, it went like 43 and they had to x-ray it to find it, but they found it, same thing. So this doctor says, we started doing some research on wounds and all this type of thing and found that bullets that pass through objects tend to go into yaw. They turn end over end. So this team of the two guys firing into the pine board, they shot through gelatin blocks, which are there to simulate human tissue. And they got it on 3,000 frames per second film in slow motion. Every time the bullet came out and got back into the air, it started going end over end. Every time. Not once or twice, every time. So then they put a board up, fired through and boom, and when they show it, and then right there, it was a keyhole entry every time. Every time the bullet passed through the gelatin, the ballistic gelatin to simulate human tissue, it flies end over end. So this guy's like, hey, we got a jacket with a hole in the back, like this, not neat and circular like a regular entry wound. And when people have criticized the single bullet, they go, hey, that bullet doesn't have any marks on it. I mean, a matter of fact, they literally, critics of the Warren Commission, and the Warren Commission did this, they fired bullets directly into the wrist of human cadavers, and it mushroomed the bullet. Oh, the nose is completely destroyed and all that. And they're like, see, that right there shows that Connolly's wounds couldn't possibly have come from that bullet. I said, except for the fact it went through Kennedy, went into yaw, and went through Connolly's chest first. So it's like a little buzzsaw turning end over end. By the time it came out and struck his wrist, it could have been tail end, sideways, which is also true. When you see the bullet, they always show it, critics show it in pictures like this is my finger. They show this picture, and you're like, oh, that bullet doesn't have a mark on it. When you turn it sideways, it's bent like this. So it doesn't roll on the table easily. It is actually deformed somewhat in the middle. Last thing I'll say on this. A doctor testified before the Warren Commission. No, sorry, House Select Committee 15 years later. Because they got into the issue of, okay, brother, you're a doctor. How do we have so little damage to the bullet? And we have all these wounds to Connolly and Kennedy and all kind of madness. Why isn't the bullet more deformed? And this made perfect sense to me, too. It's in the same article with this doctor from UCLA. Well, he was convinced by the wound. He's like, I got it. Once I saw the keyhole entry, that means the bullet's in yaw. It passed through something. It had to be Kennedy. But then this other doctor was asked, how do you have a bullet with this little deformity do this much damage? And he goes, well, there's 3 thresholds to bullets with velocity and bone. And he goes, that bullet came out of that rifle anywhere between 2,100 to 2,300 feet per second. It's out the muzzle. Now it's out into the air. It's in Dealey Plaza. It's headed towards Kennedy. He said by the time it strikes Kennedy's neck, back, upper back, it's anywhere between 18 and 19. It's decelerated somewhat in flight. Now it's into Kennedy. Coming out of his throat, he goes, I'll give you 1,600 feet. Now it's in yaw. By the time it strikes Connolly, his chest cavity, it breaks his 5th rib. It breaks off a piece of his 5th rib. Once it comes back out in the air, anyone's guess, 1,200 feet per second. Now it strikes his wrist and lodges in his thigh, and it's spent. So the guy said, here are the 3. You take that bullet and you fire it directly into heavy bone like Kennedy's head when his head explodes. The bullet then fragments. The shell or the casing, the jacket of the bullet will fail. Then all the soft lead sprayed out all over the place, which is what you find in Kennedy's head x-ray, is you see a constellation of all this like dust. It looks like it's the soft lead. When that bullet struck his skull, it fragmented the bullet, and then you see the fracture patterns within the brain or within the skull that shows where the entry was, back center. Okay, that gets into that. But that was a bullet striking nothing else and hitting bone. And I guess your skull is about as hard as any part of your body. So it strikes skull. So back to the thresholds. He said, 1, take that bullet, fire directly into bone. You fragment bone. You destroy the bullet. All hell. I mean, it's going to be destruction to both. He goes, but if you decelerate the bullet enough, you might break bone, do less deformity to the bullet. That's what's going to happen. Less deformity, enough to break bone, but not a lot of deformity to the bullet because now it's been spent somewhat. You get to the slowest threshold, it'll bounce off bone. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense to me. So he goes, explain Connolly. He goes, it's just that. It is a decelerating bullet in the body, striking some bones with enough velocity to break the bones and then head on to its next destination without doing a lot of damage to the bullet. That's what convinced me. But the bigger thing that convinced me, for all you listeners, in 1993, 30 years after the assassination, no one had ever discovered this. They did a computer enhancement. They took 2 actors. Kennedy was 6 feet 1/2 inch. Connolly was 6'3". So they took the car dimensions, they set up chairs and everything, and they had 2 actors look at every frame of the Zapruder film and made whatever movements they made and fed it into a computer. Once they had all this movement stuff in the computer, they could then go 360 around, up, down, sideways, and create a Zapruder film in 360. You with me?
Yep.
Right? Makes sense, right? So, in examining that, they discovered something they'd never discovered. Josiah Thompson wrote a book, and I love that. I mean, I just think he's a phenomenal guy to listen to, and I think he's a true believer. He believes a lot, but I think he's a wonderful man. And he wrote a book, 6 Seconds in Dallas. And he did a lot of examination of the frames of the Zapruder film, and he believed that in the 238, 240 range, again, the headshot's 313, Kennedy's showing reaction by raising his hands at around frame 225. So, if you got Kennedy reacting 223-ish to 225-ish, and Conley's reacting, and this is what Josiah and a lot of other researchers believe, that Conley's not doing anything till around 240, and that even Conley supported. Conley examined the frames for Life magazine and said, I ain't get hit by the same bullet, because look at me, I'm reacting further down the street. So everything's happening left to right. If you get in your mind's eye, Kennedy reacting, something with Conley, headshot, then they're out of there. So as it moves from left to right down the street, the question becomes, does it appear Conley's reacting at a different time than Kennedy? Which a lot of people bought. So back to failure analysis, this group that does computer enhancement or enhanced images and computer-generated things to examine, to test, they're doing a mock trial for the American Bar Association, and they actually did the mock-up. It was Oswald alone, and then one where the single bullet theory did work and didn't work, and they're doing that. But while they're examining frame by frame and having these actors move, somebody goes, hey, look, what? Conley's lapel is 6 inches off his chest on frame 224. Nobody ever noticed that. So regardless of what Conley thought, said, believed, his jacket is jumping at the point where the bullet's known to have passed through his chest, off his chest at 224. Guess what else is happening at the exact same time?
Join the conversation. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.
What?
Kennedy's arms are coming up. So there is a person that I got this for a college class I was teaching. I pulled from the internet. A guy had put like frames 220 to about 230, and he's got it running on a loop. And when you watch it, when I was teaching my students, I'm like, train your eye directly between the image of Conley and Kennedy. As you see Conley and Kennedy, train your eye, and you see this, and you see that, and you see this, and you see that. And if you're really fair to the facts and you look directly in it, when you see Kennedy start to raise up his arms, it's the exact same time Conley's lapel flies forward. I mean, exactly. So you can sit there and go, but it can't happen. Bullets can't, but it can't. Okay, it can't, but it's interesting. Now, about that reaction, too, there's a guy named John Latimer, who's a physician, who supported the Warren Commission. He wrote a book. A lot of people laughed at him. But he wrote a book, and he got into all of the physical aspects of the Lincoln assassination, 1865, and John F. Kennedy. And he showed something. When it comes to Kennedy's neck wound, it was very, very neat and circular. And the doctors there, and this is some of the stuff I can't explain away, I really can't. The doctors tended to think it was an entry wound because it was neat and circular. But what Latimer did was he took some ammunition and he did some disgusting things like a goat's leg or something that was about the size of a man's neck, and then put a tight collar on it and fired through it. And each time he did it, because the collar supported the tissue, you got more of a neat circle instead of the blown out exit you normally get. So he says, I'm just saying it came through right where the collar is. Okay. So he got into that. And he got into how the jacket raised up, because people think that the jacket mark where the bullet struck Kennedy in the back is way too low. But when you see the pictures, he also had very heavily muscled shoulders. He was a swimmer, and the jacket does tend to ride up. Your points on your clothing and where they align, like, for example, I think most people think, you just kind of think this. I just think, I'm spitballing here. But people have a tendency to think, oh yeah, there's the back of my collar, there's the front of my collar. Men's necks are like this. When you think about where in space and time the back of your collar is to your throat, it's more of a slant. So a bullet striking Kennedy high from the schoolbook depository window on a downward trajectory doesn't mean it's going to come in. It had to come in flatter. So you get into all those arguments. And again, Latimer looked at why Kennedy reacted the way he did. Many people that think frontal shot, they go, well, clearly Kennedy got shot in the throat and went, oh my, they got me. And now he's got like this clutch of his throat. That's not at all what he's doing. If you look closely and you're fair to what you're looking at, his fists are balled and he's like this. So Latimer finds a French physician in 1899 that identified what he called the Thorburns position. And the Thorburn position had to do with like child would fall out of a tree and have spinal trauma. And when they found him, the fetal position, the knees are up, the elbows are splayed, and they draw up in a knot. It's a neuromuscular reaction to trauma. Well, the bullet just passed by his spine. So the argument is Kennedy is this, he's not this. And what's interesting is when he goes to this position, to the degree Jackie, who doesn't know what's going on, grabs his left arm and starts to pull it down, this one comes down too. Then headshot, lights out, and then he's out. But I think another major point that was made about the headshot is he wore a corset, he wore a back brace.
Yeah.
He had 6-inch ace bandages around his thighs, supporting around his back a complete spine apparatus to support. It was from his sternum down. Pepper Jenkins, one of the doctors that was there he said they couldn't believe what they took off of him when they started to work on him. Like, he wears this every day? And he said when people are asking, oh, why didn't he just duck the second shot? He goes, he could not possibly have gotten down. And when you want to know why did he make the kind of backward movement in the seat, he said he couldn't go forward, which, again, is consistent with the reverse jet effect theory. All right, I've said all that. Have I convinced you now the single bullet theory is correct?
Well, what do you say about the people who are slowing down the Zapruder film and says that the driver turns and shoots him?
You know, it's funny. I just got that from a friend the other day that I really do care about. But he was like, hey, man, some of my friends who are into some conspiracies, they said it was the driver. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. Okay, I got to deal with it. I was like, okay. I said, all right. It did get out. Well, first of all, this Zapruder film, it was purchased by Life magazine in the day following the assassination from Abraham Zapruder. First, they bought the print rights and then the motion picture rights and blah, blah, blah. Life gets it. And Life won't allow anyone to see it. Then, when Jim Garrison is trying Clay Shaw, he subpoenas Time Life to get the Zapruder film and gets it. Well, once they get it down to New Orleans, some boys one night, in a room are like, let's make some copies. And they make some very, very poor copies. And now the poor copies hit the street. And this is a lot of what led to the House Select Committee on Assassinations too. I didn't really mention that, but it's true. A lot of it has to do with Geraldo Rivera, who in 1975 brought on Dick Gregory and Robert Groden, Robert Groden was big he was a consultant to JFK, the movie. He was a big camera photograph guy relative to the assassination. He got a hold of one of the Zapruder copies, one of the bootleg copies, and they put it on national TV, and then all hell breaks loose because people see the backward snap of the head, or what appears to be a backward movement of the head. So, you ask again about
the driver shooting him.
The driver shooting, right. So, my friend who said this, I showed him a really scrubbed up, high definition, well enhanced video on YouTube of the assassination. And what you clearly see on the very good copy, the very, very good copy, what you see is it's the reflection of Roy Kellerman's head. So in the car, in the driver's seat's William Greer, 54-year-old driver. He's in the front. Roy Kellerman, the head of the details, to his right in the passenger seat. Directly behind the driver is Nellie Connolly. To the right, behind the passenger seat, is John Connolly in jump seats, and then Jackie and John are in the back, okay? So, from Zapruder's vantage point, he's looking across Kellerman. The shot is panning across Kellerman into Greer. And Greer, during the shooting, does the look over the shoulder like, what the hell's going on in the back seat? When he's doing that, in almost perfect timing, Kennedy's head explodes. So when you get the really bad copy, I mean really grainy, can barely see anything, the view is, or the impression can become, because the first time I saw it, somebody told me to look at it. I'm like, holy cow, that is kind of weird looking. It looks like Greer is driving. It's like, hey, something's going on in the back. Then that reflection off the top of Kellerman's head looks just like a silver, like a nickel-plated pistol, and he fires the shot and then goes back to driving. Trouble is, if you see the cleaned up, the better version, not only can you tell it's Kellerman's head, you can also see that Greer's hands are on the steering wheel, both of them. He's not holding a pistol. And I told my friend, no, you're wrong, man, you're wrong. My cousin told me I'm like, okay. I'm like, we can't go anywhere from here, right? It is what it is. And, so other things though, this is kind of where I started on the logic thing. I did a show, we used to do some radio, and I did a show with a friend of mine. And I get there, my friend of mine finds out it's going to be a Kennedy conspiracy guy, and he goes, hey, it's your show, take it. So I get this guy on. He's written books. He's pretty famous in the world of conspiracy people. And he's telling me, after a while, I basically said, the only person you know in Dallas, Texas, on the day of the assassination that is innocent, that you're absolutely positively sure is Lee Harvey Oswald. Isn't that fair to say? And he goes, well, I'm just saying. I'm like, no, the only guy, everybody else is up for grabs, but the one person you can absolutely positively be sure of is not the shooter is Oswald. And then I said, okay, what was Oswald? And he goes, he was a patsy. And I'm like, bang, bang, bang. And now he's discovering he's in trouble. Yes, I knew he ran because he started to recognize the ramifications of things and all. I said, okay. He ran because he knew they were going to pin it on him. Yeah, that's right. He went out and killed a cop. I don't think he killed the cop. See, he gets in that whole thing. But here was my question. My question to him, I'm going to ask you. I asked him, I said, what did he know about the assassination before the shooting? He goes, nothing. Now I'm going to ask you, if Oswald goes to work that day and all the guys in the smoke-filled room, they have decided this is the guy they're pinning it on, right?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
What's the problem when he shows up for work?
Well, he wouldn't have a gun.
No. I got the one I'm talking about. You're pinning it on Oswald.
Yeah.
How do you know at 12:30 he's not on the street? Hey, Jackie, it's Lee. It's Lee.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you. And oh hell, there. Okay. Now remember, after the shooting, we got him on the 6th floor by himself firing a weapon. And the guy's like, well, and I say, no, I'm asking you, if you did this whole thing, right? You got together, and we're going to pin it on Oswald. Didn't somebody raise their hand like, how the hell do we know he won't be standing with 20 people during the shooting?
Yeah.
How do we know he won't be on the street? Isn't it interesting that the one person no one sees during the shooting is Oswald? He's the only one that nobody knows where he was that time. There were people that said he was near the lunchroom earlier, but nobody sees him during the shooting. And I'm just thinking that would be a high risk. I thought the same thing with the O.J. Simpson thing. When I remember the first thing came out about Furman and these racist cops are all pinning it on poor O.J., you're at the scene. And Furman, and that whole thing about what he said to the screenwriter, I've never quite been sure. Was he just saying, this is the bawdy talk of the guys around the precinct, or was he saying it for himself? I never could. But, he got pinned the racist and all the stuff, and it basically discredited all of his other testimony. Mark Furman, right? Okay.
Yep.
Well, I saw him on an interview one time where he said, when we got there, she was such a bloody mess, we didn't even know who it was. We had no idea who she was. There's blood all the way to the street. Her head's about cut off, and she's laying there. We go in the house. There's 2 kids sleeping. We're kind of like, who else is in danger? And then they're looking through IDs, and they finally realize who she is. Now, Johnny Cochran, to some degree, as a defense attorney, played this game of a bunch of, racist cops came in and they wanted OJ, so they started making up the story to pin it on OJ. And I thought to myself, I'll ask you. It's midnight, June 12th, 1994, whatever it was. What's the problem for those cops showing up if they're going to start pinning it on OJ?
Well, same as you said before, they don't even know where he is.
Exactly. If he's in Des Moines, Iowa, speaking to the Rotary Club in front of 1,500 people, and he's been out there 2 days, you got a world of trouble if you start pinning it on OJ.
Right.
I don't know that anybody thinks that way, but I know I damn sure if Furman's like, hey, guys, yeah, we all hate OJ, right? Hey, Mark, where are you going with this? I think we ought to start pinning it on OJ. I'd be like, whoa, where is OJ? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like, how do we know where he is? So that's kind of, but people were like, oh, I know, they started pinning on OJ from the first moment. I'm like, really? I don't know. I don't think they would. And I think it's, again, very risky to pin the assassination on a guy that you don't know what the hell he's going to do during the time of the shooting.
True.
So anyway, and he never could quite come up with the reason to tell me, why a guy ran, got a pistol, killed a cop, pulled his pistol out again when he got arrested. So those are the things that I don't know. Again, I just think something comes up sometimes and I think, okay, how much do we know at a particular point in time, and how risky would it be for people not to be on the same page? Which is another thing I asked this particular researcher. I said, let me ask you this too. And I said, what's he goes, there were shots from the front. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were shots from the front, the grassy knoll. The headshot came from the grassy knoll. Okay. I said, now, back to the guys in the room setting up the assassination. Did anybody say, Chief, check this again. We're going to pin it. Yeah, Oswald, the guy up in the building. But we're firing the fatal shot from the front. That's right, from the front. What then? We're going to do body alteration, cover up, What we're going to do is years of cover up to cover up the fact we shot from the place not where the guy we're pinning it on.
Well, but there has been some sort of cover up, which is why the records haven't been released. So what is that cover up?
No. But what I'm saying, I agree. But no, cover up as in we didn't want World War III. I do think if the government isn't the most nefarious actors, there may have been, I think Lyndon Johnson made a horrendous human being, I'm sure, as everybody thinks. J. Edgar Hoover, probably not much better. I don't know. Spin that whatever way you want about these people who were, well, you and I have been in situations. We've been in courtrooms. We've been around people, not at the very, very top, but we've been around people in communities that are like looked up to, politicians, and you're like, oh my God. When I was doing radio and I saw people come in that were at pretty high levels of government, I used to go, oh my God, this person gets votes. I mean, that's not trying to play like sour grapes, like, but for the great, I'd be there. But yeah, some of them I was kind of like, they're kind of greasy and it's whatever. So those people are in high levels positions and things. But I do think that there's a possibility that they truly did say, okay, here's what we got. We're 1 year out from the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we know on the Warren Commission, because we have Alan Dulles, we've been trying to kill Castro. And we've been trying to do it with the mob. And I don't think America can really handle that right. And I don't think that looked really good for us. So it's Oswald, it's done, it's over. I think that there's something that could have been moving that. Because what if Oswald did it because the Soviet Union told him to? What do you think the U.S. wants the next day? I think they want World War III.
Right.
So I think that argument has been made. And I think averting World War III would definitely be on somebody's mind in that situation. So the question would be, would the government lie to the American people to avert what would kill hundreds of millions? Yeah, maybe. God, it doesn't seem like such a bad thing to do either. To spare Kennedy, or to eliminate, to take away whatever justice could come to Kennedy and his family so as not to have World War III. But you don't seem to buy that totally.
I don't know. There is a reason. I have no idea what that reason is.
You see, I always wonder though about they're on YouTube. You can listen to them on YouTube. I'm sure there are other recordings. And I don't know whether this was foresight. It might have been a great deal of foresight. I don't know though, because it seems almost Lyndon Johnson taped all of his conversations on the phone. And then they got released too. Yeah, everybody did. I mean, Kennedy did a lot of his too, but I know that Johnson did all of his. So when Hoover calls Johnson, they've been like neighbors for 30 years. Johnson's been in the House and Senate since the 40s. Or maybe, no, I guess 38, I think, was his first term in the House. And then he wins the U.S. Senate in 1948. They called him Landslide Lyndon because he won by like 13 votes. No, Precinct 13 showed up and put him just over. It was all, and John Connally was involved with it. So he was a dirty politician. There's no question about that with Lyndon Johnson. But Hoover calls, and he's like, Herbert, or J. Edgar, we're not only like neighbors, we're like brothers, and there's nobody in D.C. I respect more, with my life than you. And he goes, well, Mr. President, I appreciate that. I really appreciate, they're just a bunch of bullshit. They're back and forth at how much they love each other. And he goes, what we got there, J. Edgar? He goes, it's Oswald. It's Oswald. He's alone. He did the shooting. You sure about that? This is like 48 hours after the shoot. Yeah. We got it all. It was Oswald. He said he's some nutty kind of commie. He's a commie. He's a nut. And then Johnson says, do you think they were trying to get me too? So there are a lot of people that believe that Lyndon Johnson was behind the assassination. So did he have the foresight to say? So, hey, there's a tape where I was asking Hoover if I even thought maybe I was a target. I never had anything to do with it. I don't know. And because I thought about that same thing. This is going way out. Remember in the Trayvon Martin shooting and death, one of the things CNN and a lot of the media was running was, I don't know if you ever saw this, but the George Zimmerman, right? The shooter in the Trayvon Martin shooting in Florida. Yeah. One of the things that CNN was wearing out was he called 911 and the dispatcher said, sir, are you following this young man? He goes, yeah, I'm trying to find him. No, stop that right now, right?
Yeah.
And then surely he didn't stop. You remember that whole thing, right? Well, I got a hold of a video on YouTube. They've probably scrubbed it now, but it was less than 48 hours after the shooting, and they had not charged him yet. And it was a police video. It was up. And they got him. They're like, Mr. Zimmerman, you want to take us through everything that happened? And he goes, sure. Yeah, I'll take you through. So he's this, and he's that. And the guy in the hoodie looked at me and said, hey, what are you doing, And he said, then that's when I called 911. Now, again, it's not even nightfall the next day. The shooting was at night. It's in February, but it's daytime, late afternoon probably, latter part of the day. And he's telling these cops, it was at that point I took the phone and called 911. And he goes, what did dispatch say? He goes, well, they said that you guys would soon be out. Did they say anything? And the guy literally said, did they say? He goes, well, they told me to stop. They asked me if I was following him, and I told the dispatcher yes. And he said, well, stop. And then Zimmerman says, so when the dispatcher told me to stop, I turned around and started walking back towards my car. It was when I was walking back towards my car, I then again saw him, and he goes, hey, MFer, why do you keep following me? And then they got into it, and that's what led to the final altercation. But I thought that was interesting because would he have had the foresight to say, one day CNN's going to be running something about how I didn't cease and desist when they told me to. Let me make up a story. I don't think so. I think the kid was telling the truth.
Yeah.
But CNN hammered that every night. Damn well, the dispatcher told him to turn and walk away, and he did not. So when I saw that video, I was like, wow, that's interesting. Because he's walking him through the very locations. And he said, well, my car was parked back there. So when dispatch said, ditch it, I turned and started going to the car. And that's when I walked into him again. And if that's true, then he didn't, because that was a big part of why he should burn in hell and everything else was he didn't follow orders of the dispatcher.
Right.
But then when I see the video, it goes in my mind like, did he know to say that? Did Lyndon Johnson know to say, were they shooting at me too? I don't think people have that kind of foresight. So there was a couple of books written on it. There is a whole theory that Johnson eliminated Kennedy because he wanted to be president.
Yeah.
And, it is interesting. It happens in Texas. But here to close up things, let me just this is what's always, here comes my stream of consciousness on this, because I always found this fascinating. Okay, the shots are fired, Kennedy's dead. 24 hours later, or 48 hours later, Oswald's dead. Now, I've listened to also Lyndon Johnson with the members of the Warren Commission, well, namely Richard Russell. So Richard Russell was a segregationist from Georgia, and that was his boy. That was his mentor. That's the man that raised him in the U.S. Senate, Richard Russell. So he calls, you can find this on YouTube. He calls Richard Russell, and he goes, "Hey, Richard, I want to tell you something. I just got a press release out. I want to read it to you. Lyndon Johnson has now named under Executive Order 11-2-19, I used to know the number, there will be a commission formed. It will include the Honorable Earl Warren." He goes, Richard Russell. And he goes, whoa, Mr. President, whoa, I can't do this. And they get into it. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you one thing. You're a patriot, and you're my guy on the Warren Commission, and I can't arrest your ass, but I'll damn sure make sure. And he's threatening him with he's going to say, I'm not going to stick the FBI, but I'm going to get your ass in there. And then Russell's like, no, Mr. President, really, I'm too busy. And he hates Earl Warren. I don't trust that man. Earl Warren's because of Brown versus Board of Education. He thinks he's a California fruit, that's turning the country upside down. He's too liberal. So he goes, I don't trust that man. I hate that man. I can't work. He goes, no. You by God are going to work with him, or I'll come over and kick your ass. And so Johnson's telling the U.S. Senator he is going to be on the Warren Commission. Well, he clearly doesn't want to be on the Warren Commission. Earl Warren, I've already told you, he didn't want to be on the Warren Commission. Who else is on the Warren Commission?
I don't know.
How about Gerald Ford?
Yeah.
All right. What's he later?
President.
Under what man was he vice president? Richard Nixon?
Yeah.
And what does he do as soon as Nixon resigns? He pardons Nixon? Isn't that interesting? So, who defeated Nixon in 1960? John F. Kennedy. He defeated Nixon.
Okay.
So, here's the timeline. JFK defeats Nixon. Nixon's out to pasture. He runs for governor in California in 62 and loses again. Jerry Brown's dead. And now he's like, he wrote the books, The Six Crises of Richard Nixon. He told the press, you won't have me to kick around anymore. So he sulks away until 68. Okay. But Nixon's out there. Who do you think planned the entire Bay of Pigs invasion, which went south in 1961? Who do you think was behind setting that up?
No idea.
Richard Nixon. He's the vice president under Eisenhower. So they put in the plan to do the invasion into Cuba in 61, and then oopsie, Nixon wins. So they show up at Nixon's compound. I'm sorry, Kennedy wins. Oopsie, Kennedy wins. So now the CIA types and other State Department people show up at Kennedy's doorstep in December of 60 before he's inaugurated. Like, sir, we got to let you in on something. What's that? He goes, we're invading Cuba in the spring. I'm sorry, what was that? They thought if Nixon wins, plans are. So, who directs all that? Allen Dulles. Who else is on the CIA? On the Warren Commission. The director of the CIA, who's fired by Kennedy for the failure of the Bay of Pigs. Who else is on the Warren Commission? Allen Dulles. He's put on the Warren Commission. So you've got Russell, doesn't want to be there. Warren doesn't want to be there. Allen Dulles, who was fired by Kennedy. Gerald Ford, who later pardons Nixon. That's kind of crazy. Now, another person is Hale Boggs. Cokie Roberts from TV, her father. Where's he from? Louisiana. How does he find his fate? How does his life end? Plane crash in Alaska. They never find him. I never thought about this. I'm watching a story a few years ago, and they said, here's an untold tale most people don't know. And it was, the woman said, in the movie, you saw JFK. Yep. Walter Matthau played Russell Long. Russell Long was son of Huey Long, the senator that was assassinated. So in the movie, Russell Long was like, yeah, Jim Garrison, I never believed that Warren Commission crap. And it gets Jim Garrison back into investigating the Kennedy assassination in New Orleans. So this woman was saying, it was never Russell Long. It was Hale Boggs, who was on the Warren Commission. So she was saying what happened was Hale Boggs went to Jim Garrison. It's like, I'm sitting on this commission. I'm sitting on the nastiness. I know what's going on, but they'll kill me if I ever let you know, basically. So Russell Long went, I'll take it, because he was that kind. I'll take it. I'll say it was me that got you thinking about it. So this was her take. Boggs is giving Garrison all this information from the inside. Then mysteriously, after Clay Shaw is acquitted in the trial in New Orleans, a couple of years later, Hale Boggs dies in a plane crash and they can never find him. Can't find the remains or anything. So this one was bringing up an interesting point, because I was kind of like, yeah, it is kind of strange that Boggs is from Louisiana, and could he have been feeding Garrison stuff? But as you go through it, this is the other key point. Who pretty much was involved in the Bay of Pigs invasion? CIA types and Cubans.
Okay.
The Cubans that wanted Cuba back, right?
Yeah.
Who broke into Watergate?
CIA.
And
I don't know.
Cubans.
Ah.
The plumbers were literally the same people that did the Bay of Pigs invasion. Look it up. I'm dead serious. The ones that broke in, that took Nixon down. So some people have said, and some people have even tried to tie Nixon to it, that what Nixon was in the Watergate hotel wanting was the dirt on whether they knew he had been involved in the Kennedy assassination. And then when the whole thing went down, he had dirt on Gerald Ford, who'd been on the Warren Commission. So he named Gerald Ford the vice president, because when he resigned, Ford would clearly pardon and give him what he wanted. More and more stories I've seen says no way that Nixon actually liked Kennedy. They had been somewhat friendly, because they went into the House together in 47. They were both elected in 46. They went to each other's wedding. I know that Richard Nixon was at Jack and Jackie's wedding. But, all that stuff about, it is interesting, though, the people that end up on the Warren Commission, like an Alan Dulles, who sits there. Last thing on this, I promise. So a guy wrote a book a few years ago. I reached out to him one time when I was teaching. He wrote a book on the Warren Commission, just about the Warren Commission, about what it was like, how it went down. And he said in the opening hearing, Wagner Carr, who was the Attorney General of the state of Texas, Kennedy shot November 22. The Warren Commission's named November 29th, 1 week later. Then they start having meetings. So in their first meeting, Wagner Carr, the Attorney General of the state of Texas, had reached out to J. Lee Rankin, the chief counsel to the Warren Commission, and said, you got a problem. He goes, there's a rumor running all over this town that Lee Harvey Oswald had an identifying number, I think it was 172, with the FBI. He was a paid informant. He had FBI ties, and they're like, oh gosh. So he goes to Earl Warren, who apparently, the way the book is written, and just general accounts, was a little naive. He was a World War I veteran, patriot, all that stuff. But apparently he was a little bit naive, and maybe at times about things. So they come to him and said, hey, it's come to our attention that maybe Oswald might have been an FBI agent. And he goes, okay, well, then we'll have an emergency meeting. So they go in, and he goes, okay, put this on the agenda. Just call J. Edgar Hoover, get him in here, get him under oath, and we'll find out. And they said, Alan Dulles goes, he's not going to tell you the truth. And they said, Warren is shocked. He's like, excuse me, run that by me. He goes, if he's a good agent, he's not going to tell you the truth. So Alan Dulles says in this meeting, if he's a good FBI agent, he will not tell you the truth about Oswald's potential as an FBI whatever. And they say that that were there, like, Warren's like, no, come again. I'm sorry. You're saying that Hoover will come in here and lie to us? And he goes, yeah, I know I would. And he goes, if you called me in and asked me for dirties on the CIA, I would lie, absolutely lie. And they said the whole crew was shocked that he said that. Well, during the whole Warren Commission, he knows that that the CIA had been trying to enlist the mob to kill Castro. He knew. And he never raised his hand and said, one angle we might want to go down to get a really thorough investigation is this blowback from trying to kill Castro? Maybe somebody got wind. He never brought it up. He played dumb. But what was interesting is in the first meeting, him telling Warren, I wouldn't tell you the truth. Are you kidding? If this was CIA stuff, I wouldn't say it, which Warren could not fathom. But now, do I know that Dulles was necessarily dirty? I don't know. I don't know exactly what he was, but he's an interesting guy to have there. Yeah.
So what do you think the records are going to show when they're declassified?
That Oswald was a known person, and they basically flubbed up and never took him seriously like they should have. I think that's all it is. I really do.
Okay.
I don't think that it would be in a government document that they were behind killing Kennedy. The government was behind. I don't know who the hell would put that to paper.
Yeah.
Why would you put it to paper?
That's fair.
But do I think that there's plenty to show? Oh, hell. Well, the famous note thing, too. This is the Hosty thing. So Hosty was an agent in Dallas, James Hosty. And he was directed to chase Oswald around because they knew he'd come back from the Soviet Union. And it was like one of those, you got a desk, you got a potted plant, picture of the family, and you got like a little check mark each day. And on a rotational basis, go harass Lee Harvey Oswald. Go find out what he's up to. And he never could find him. But he kept finding his wife, Marina. And so it is legend that Lee Harvey Oswald walked into the Dallas field office on or about November 8th and said, where's Hosty? And they're like, he's out in the field right now. And he goes, well, you tell him he better stop threatening my wife and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, well, sir, he can come back. Give me a pad or something. Is the way it's supposed to go down. And he writes out, according to the receptionist, keep this up and I'll blow up the building. According to Hosty, it was like, I don't appreciate you harassing my wife. Pretty much done. That was it. So it all depends on how dramatic you want to make it, because I think the receptionist said, blow up the building. Well, here's what we know. And it was depicted in a few movies. It was depicted in the movie Parkland. It's been shown, and it's true. This came out in the 1970s during the church hearings. Frank Church, when he did the hearings, this came out. Hosty was called in and testified. Oswald gets killed, and Hosty's in his office because they're all still panicked. It's Sunday, but Oswald gets killed, and they said Gordon Shanklin, who was the director of the field office in Dallas, is like, Hosty, get your ass in here. And he comes in, he goes, where's the note? And he goes, I kept it in an envelope. And he goes, I want it gone. And he said, he started to tear it up or something. And he goes, no, get out of my sight. You take that, burn it, flush it, whatever. Get it the hell away from me. So he did. So he sits on it for several years and never says a word. And then eventually it is found out. So he testified to the, I think the House Select Committee testified as well. I'm pretty sure it started the church hearing, same time frame, late 70s. But I believe it is very conceivable that your M1A1 standard issue FBI agent in 1963, that you found out the guy that they were supposed to be doing a better job of surveilling and left a note, shot the president, they'd burn that note because J. Edgar Hoover would tear them apart, right?
Yeah.
I just think that's self-preservation. The conspiracy people have taken up smoking gun. They knew that they would have used it against Oswald to prove he's the crazy guy that they said he was. The only other reason to destroy is because they were in on it. They were in on it with Oswald. I think it was merely, if I'm Shanklin, that director of the Dallas office, and I got a boy out there who didn't follow up on the fact somebody came in and made a threat and you didn't follow up. So in one of the movies, I think it was Parkland, I believe it was Parkland that came out about that. The way they depict it in the movie, Shanklin comes running in because he knew about the note and goes, Hosty, what did you do? And he goes, I get threats, but the guy just killed the president and you didn't do anything. And he goes, what if I was going to chase around it? He's like defending himself. If I had to chase around everybody that threatened me, he goes, but this one killed the president. We can't live this down. So and then they show the later scene after Oswald's dead. It's like, he's dead. Get rid of it. I think that's perfectly consistent with people that are scared of Hoover. I don't think that necessarily mean that they were involved in anything else. But I would like to know what the note said. Did it say blow up the building? Or did it say more like, I don't like you talking to my wife? Yeah. All right. So what questions or thoughts do you have in closing?
I just really can't wait to see what's in it. I think, it's got to be something big because you wouldn't keep it a secret all these years, especially after the first time when Trump said he was going to disclose and then he didn't.
No, I think you're right there for sure. That piece with the Napolitano, from TV, I think it's Andrew from TV, but the retired judge, he's a character. I mean, I like to listen to him, I like a lot of what he has to say and all. And I thought it was interesting. He said, hey, I've never seen Trump scared. Never seen him nervous about something. And when he said, if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't have either. I was like, wow, that's saying a lot. If you saw what I saw. So, I don't know. I do hope though, as you sort of stated, that if we do find out even something bad, I don't know. Like I heard a commentator the other day saying, I'll cheat and say this from another commentator. I think they're going to come out and say something which may be true that's less than horrific. And then everybody's going, they're covering it up again. And they're just going to say, and it could be the truth. Like it really could be the truth. Just that they knew of Oswald and didn't do enough to stop him, and stop right there. That's it. But that's not going to be good enough. And therefore they'll go, there they go. They keep right on lying. So I don't know. But I do think what I said earlier, I find it hard to believe that they'd put smoking guns out there in government chains. I mean, why would you do that? Like memo. No. Memo to Director Laura. We killed Kennedy today. Stop. Hope no one finds out. Stop. We're going to take out Oswald tomorrow, who we set up as a patsy. Yeah. Hope that document doesn't get discovered. Right?
I don't think that's in there.
Okay, so we're going to cover this matter and more coming up in our upcoming episodes and see if we can tie all this stuff back to some discussion of how history really... I don't think anything new ever happens. This has been going on since the beginning of time. People are people. They do, they just have greater technology to probably do more damage. But that's about it. If, in fact, we are actually part of some kind of real universe here or whatever we're in. So... anything else in closing?
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.